Welcome to TV Toastmasters Club 9523. I'd like to welcome those of you in our TV audience, as well as those of you who joined us today in our studio audience. TV Toastmasters meets on the third Saturday of each month at the Henderson Town Center, which is located at 7850 5 Mile Road. Now today we have a fantastic meeting for you with two dynamic speakers, what I'm sure will be a sizzling Toastmasters opportunity, or Tabletopics opportunity, and some fantastic evaluations. Now, this morning when I got up, it was a fantastic day. It's a spring morning, and this is about as perfect as weather gets. About 70 degrees, sunny, not too hot, not too cool, just perfect. And I think I admitted a couple of meetings ago that December was my favorite month of the year, but spring isn't too far behind. And as I thought about it, this is probably the most optimistic time of year, because there are a lot of things in spring that really gear you towards being very optimistic. For one thing, as I mentioned, the weather returns. The weather turns nice. After snow and cold and ice, you finally have good weather returning. So people are getting back outside, and there's nothing that makes the blood boil like getting outside, being active, doing those types of things. The other things, of course, and we all remember this when we were younger, but there's nothing better than the last day of school, right? And it's great to be out of school, and of course all the kids have summer plans, and that's fantastic. But probably the most important thing that makes people extremely optimistic this time of year is that it's graduation season. And I can remember many, many years ago that when you graduate from high school or college, that is probably the most optimistic time of your life because there's so many possibilities in front of you. It's probably the most scary time of your life also, but it's also a very optimistic time of your life. So I think spring obviously has the reputation of being just a fantastic time of year, and I think that's one reason it is such a fantastic time of year, because it's a very optimistic time of year. So I'm hoping that all of you have great plans for the summer, and that you are all optimistic about some great things that are going to happen over the next couple months. As I mentioned, we have a great show today. We've got two great speakers, but I'd like to start by bringing up our word of the day and our grammarian. Please welcome Brenda Murphy.
Thank you, Toastmaster Darren, and good morning, fellow Toastmasters. It's my privilege to be able to have the role of grammarian for our meeting today, and I also will be keeping track of the ahs, and I have also the very nice opportunity to introduce the word of the day. And we have this role, specifically introducing the role of the word of the day within our meeting to help us increase our vocabulary and perhaps even make our communications even more rounded and even more rich. So our word of the day is inkling, and it actually is a noun, and there are two meanings to kind of help us understand about the word inkling. It is a slight indication on a suggestion, which could be a hint or a clue, or you can think of it in terms of a slight knowledge or vague notion. So the goal would be to try and incorporate the word inkling in any of the speaking opportunities that you would have today. Thank you.
Thank you, Brenda. The next part of our meeting are the table topics, and for my mind, table topics, I think, is one of the more important parts of a Toastmasters meetings. This is the time where members are called upon to answer an impromptu questions with a 1 to 2 minute answer, and this is really the great time of the meeting where you get the opportunity to practice, because all of us have been at work or in some other situations where we're put on the spot. Paul, what do you think about that? Gordon, what do you think about that? And that's when your heart starts to race. You start to think, okay, can I come up with a cogent set of thoughts in 10 seconds? And this is where you get the practice. So for me, at least, this has been the most valuable part of the Toastmasters experience, and it's also interesting. And of course, we have Carol Kormelink coming up. She is our Tabletopics Toastmaster. So Carol's very tough, so I have an inkling that there's a lot of brow starting to sweat out in the audience right now. So please welcome Carol Kormelink.
Thank you, Mr. Toastmaster. Actually, the table topics are very easy today, and you say, well, I don't have an inkling. This is where you are to be put on the spot. You don't want your brain to freeze when your boss asks you a question and you can't come up with an answer. Well, by practicing here to answer off of the cuff and use inkling whenever you come up here, it's going to be very easy table topics today because there are one-word table topics. And you can say anything that you want about it. You like it, you dislike it, but anything that you want, the history of it, whatever. My first table topic today to answer is popcorn. Phil Rigg, let's hear what you have to say about popcorn.
Thank you, Carol. Popcorn, one of my favorite things that I really shouldn't be eating. Popcorn brings back the smell of popcorn, brings back the ideas of summers past, of our childhood. We think of carnivals and fairs and the movies we have gone with our parents and our friends. And Ohio is corn capital of the Midwest as well. So besides just your popcorn, your Ohio sweet white corn, I'm a general contractor and don't have a whole lot of work right now. So I'm going to get into the barbecued rib business. Popcorn would be a nice sideline addition. We're thinking about grilling the corn and the husk, but popcorn, it's a great staple. You can caramelize it, you can put cheese on it, you can carry it with you, it lasts a good long time. Gets between your teeth, but with every good thing in life, sometimes there's a few drawbacks, but that's what life's all about. As Darren was saying, it's springtime, you know, the flowers are blooming. We have a wonderful habit in our backyard of gardening and getting over ambitious by planting more things than we really need to take care of in August when the weeds are getting high and the grass is growing and it's just way too hot and humid and muggy to get out there. But when it does get that hot and you're hiding inside in the air conditioning later on this summer, make yourself a batch of popcorn. It will bring back memories of this springtime when the weather's in the 70s and not in the upper 90s. And I've always said, pick one or the other. I don't complain when it gets too hot in the summertime. I complain when it gets too cold in the wintertime. I say if you whine about both, you're just whining. So after the meeting today, I think I'm going to go sample some popcorn. I like mine with cheese. Thank you very much.
Thank you for that great answer. Phil, the other night I was at the fresh market and the gal says, oh, here's some really good popcorn. It's cheese, it's sweet with cheddar cheese. And she said, I love it. So she opened the bag and let me taste it before I bought it. So I was buying it for my officers that meet at my house tomorrow night. And that's gone. And I had popcorn all over my, oh, how does that popcorn get all over your teeth? Thank you for that answer. Our next one-word clue for the table topics is cobweb. Michelle, let's hear what you have to say about cobweb.
Madam Table Topics Master. Cobwebs, I think we all have them. We've all seen them. I remember growing up as a child getting kind of disgusted and saying, Mom, there's a cobweb there, or Grandma, there's a cobweb there. And until I got my own house, I never realized how they can just pop up anywhere. So they're not fun to deal with. So there's two types of spiders, I believe. I think there's ones that make webs and there's ones that are crawlers. So there's ones that actually kill little bugs and the gnats and stuff, but then there's the other ones that create the webs. So you don't want to get rid of the little ones that crawl because they keep all the little other bugs out. But you don't want the ones that create the webs because then you got a big mess to clean. I would say my most cobweb part of my house is right as my front door. So when you walk up, there's the light, and then I have cobwebs all the time there, and it just drives me nuts because it's so unattractive. But I'm not really trying to fight with the ones that are on the outside because I have enough issues with the ones that are on the inside. So I kind of let those go, and every once in a while I'll take like a stick or a twig and just kind of knock them off to the side. So, and I have to say, I don't clean the cobweb very often, but hey, none of us do, right? It's just one of those things that until we are having guests come over, then we might do that, but we can deal with them every day. So, That's what I have to say about cobwebs.
Steve, get ready. Oh, Steve, are you available? My next one-word clue is birthday. Steve, what can you tell us about birthday? Steve Aaronholtz.
Thank you, Madam Tabletopics Master, fellow Toastmasters, and our guests looking in at home. Birthdays. Well, I just had one. Just this last week, in fact. It's funny, you get to a point in life where you wonder, how did I get here? Because it seems like I've racked up quite a few more than I realized. It's interesting, too, because when you start getting to the point where you can take the senior discount, you have to look and see. Is it something that applies when you're 55, 60, 65? And whatever it is, I'll be too young for it, I'm sure. I know last year I had my 55th birthday and my wife says, "Oh, now you can order from the senior menu at Bob Evans." And to tell you the truth, I still don't look back there to see what is on that menu because it's pretty much what you'll find through the rest of the menu, except that there isn't as much. I still like my quantity, so I don't go looking there very often for something. Other than that, birthdays. I guess the one thing that was a little bit sad this year is this is the second year that I've had my birthday all to myself. I was born 2 weeks late, and I landed on my father's birthday. My father had actually been out bowling with his buddies the night before, and my mom had gotten up early to make a cake for my dad. My grandmother was with my parents at the time, and thinking that my mother was going to have her babies as fast as my grandmother did, I think she practically dragged my father out of bed, shaved him and dressed him, and told him that the baby's coming. Well, I was born at 11:15 in the morning, so it wasn't something that was real urgent, but I attribute the fact that I was born in the morning before noon as the reason why I tend to be more of a morning person. So birthdays are something that come, and after a while, they don't really mean that much to you. Madam Tabletopics Master?
I've heard that the only person who doesn't want to live to be 100 is not 99. Didn't get it? Okay. My last table topic is dozen. Gordon, what can you tell us about dozen? And don't forget to use the word inkling.
Thank you, Carol, and thank you for reminding me to use the word inkling. And I don't really have to try hard to use the word inkling. I do not have an inkling of what I'm talking about right now. Carol asked me to talk about a dozen. A dozen to me means a dozen, I guess $12 or $1,200. It can mean a lot of things. Right now, I would say the most prevalent thing in my mind about a dozen is last July, I was laid off from my job, July 31st. Although I am working back at the company as a contract worker, it's funny that you bring up a dozen because I'm looking at July as coming up again, and that will be a dozen months that I have been not employed in the same manner that I was in the past. And that's an interesting position to be in because during that time, once you reach a certain age, at least in my case, I've always planned for the future, which I think I've gone through in the past year at Toastmasters. So it's not like I'm 25 years old and have 2 kids and the world's going to end. The layoff actually got me to a place where I started looking out at other things. And I'm actually still looking at the place I work. There's a couple of jobs that we're looking at, and I'm looking one actually up here in Florence, Elizabethtown. And as of Thursday, I actually sent a resume out to Australia, believe it or not. And that's interesting because a dozen is, there's probably right now resumes since last October, I would say I've sent out about 70 resumes. So there's several dozens of resumes that have gone out. I can definitely guarantee you that it's a hard marketplace. There's many jobs out there, just hundreds of jobs. The problem today, I think, with finding a new job anyway, is not that the job isn't there, it's the competition and the level of competition that's out there. Some of the jobs I look at they're looking for people with master's degrees that have 8 years experience and those sorts of things. And in fact, I competed with some gentlemen down at UK where PhDs were involved. So it's very competitive. And again, it's probably more than a dozen. I've sent out a lot of resumes, but a dozen months are coming up for me. Thank you, Madam Toastmaster, or Tabletopics Master.
Thank you, Gordon, for not having an inkling of what you were going to say. You did well.
What future do you envision for yourself? What dreams do you have? If you want your dreams to come true, you must have confidence in yourself and your abilities. A Toastmasters Club can help you build that confidence. A low-cost learning experience for men and women. Toastmasters shows you how to express yourself clearly and effectively. Make your dreams a reality. Join a Toastmasters Club.
Next, we're ready for our prepared speeches. We have 2 prepared speeches today, and I'm looking forward to being very well entertained by both of our speakers. Our first speaker is Paul Wessels. This is speech number 3 for Paul in the Competent Communication Manual, and his objective is get to the point, and the title is Improvements. Please welcome Paul Wessels.
Thank you, Darren. Everybody out there in TV land and everybody here. Title's Improvements. What I have to have you do first is I have to have you think back when you were a kid. Think back you're on the playground, maybe you're, I don't know, on the swings or something like that, and you fall. What do you fall on when you fall as a kid? What I fell on more times than not was concrete or asphalt, because they had the playgrounds in concrete or asphalt at that time. Nowadays, kids fall on wood chips and they fall on little ground up pieces of rubber. You see a lot of helmets. Kids are wearing helmets these days for riding bikes. Of course, seat belts everywhere. You also, what you don't see is don't see a lot of lead paint in schools, and you don't see asbestos in schools anymore. So things have improved for our kids physically, and I'm going to talk about other ways that I think we've improved with respect to our kids, and that's actually teaching our kids how to handle adversity. And I picked teaching kids how to the skills to handle adversity because I think it's one of the most important things you can teach your kids. And obviously, if you're going to teach kids how to handle adversity, you actually have to put them under stress or adverse conditions in order for them to learn the skills to overcome the adversity. And what I think we're doing better than just a generation ago is that we actually have systems in place available to us. We may not use them, but they're available to us, where we actually have more control and monitoring over our kids under adverse conditions. For example, way back when, let's say you were teaching your kid how to swim, maybe 100 years ago. I hear that you take them out to a pond, you throw them in the water, kind of hands off, survival of the fittest, let them struggle. For most kids, that was fine. They learned how to swim, but you had a certain percentage that came out terrified of the water. Nowadays, we have a little bit more control and monitoring, so we send them to swimming instructors. So same thing done, a lot less unintended damage. So I don't think the safety nets are any tighter these days. I just would like to say I think they're more strategically placed than they were in the past, just a generation ago. I remember as a kid, I was a little tyke playing basketball. And what they did back then is they brought everybody out. The coach would assess your skills, and the kids that were good started, and the kids that weren't so good, they sat on the bench. Now, of course, I sat on the bench. I was a bench warmer. But I think the systems back then, once you were selected, the systems kind of created a momentum that made it very difficult for the child on the bench to become a starter, and that's simply because they didn't play. So they didn't have the real world experience, playing time experience, to overcome that adversity or that stress on the court. So once you were selected, you kind of tended to stay in the same spot. Now, I have a 12-year-old and a 9-year-old. And when they started playing basketball, it was a little bit different. They assessed the kids, and they split them up so that the teams were equal. But what happened was, any kid that wanted to play could play, and you had to play half the game. So what this did, some of the parents were like, well, this is kind of forced socialism. You know, you're not giving the kids a sense of victory and defeat, and you're also keeping the kids that are really good, you're kind of holding them back because they can't play the whole game. I tended to agree with them for the little kids, because if you kept that system in place up to the NBA, it wouldn't be very interesting looking at NBA players if, you know, anybody who wanted to play could play, and you had to play half the game. So at one point, you had to let survival of the fittest or natural selection do its course. But for the little kids, what it did was it gave the kids that were really good a sense of compassion, I think, for the ones that sat on the bench. And the ones that sat on the bench, it gave them that real-world playing time to where they could actually gain the skills to overcome the stresses of the game. So I think it really worked out a lot better than when I was a kid, kind of throw them out there and that was it. So a little bit more monitoring and a little bit more control these days, but I think it benefits the kids. The next thing I want to just point out is I think nowadays, and I'm just going to call it what we do different nowadays than we did just a generation ago, is we give our kids, I'll call it behavioral vaccinations. And what I mean by that is, you know, way back when we didn't have vaccinations, you actually, when you got an illness, you actually became resilient to that illness. But you had to go through the illness to be resilient. If you survived the illness, next time you were resilient. When you give a vaccination, you give just a little bit more monitoring and control. We got better systems now. You give them the vaccination, they become resilient, but they don't have to go through the adverse effects. You don't have to go through the illness. Just like a vaccination, I believe nowadays we have strategic systems available to us, if we choose to use them, that are much more intelligent and they're much more monitoring and control. So when you put your kids in these situations, they can learn those skills in a much more paced way where they don't become overwhelmed. So I just believe, I have an inkling that in years past, parents wanted to do just as well as we wanted to do for their kids. I mean, they wanted, but they just had the different tools and information back then, and they just acted on that tool and information that they had. Nowadays, we just have better tools and information. And I'm sure, I have an inkling, that in the future, they're going to have even better tools than we have now. So they're actually going to have more efficient systems for teaching our kids how to overcome adversity and whatnot. So I think even though today people may say, oh, we're pampering our kids, we're too much control, I don't believe that's true. I just believe that we have better systems and it's a little bit more strategic than it was, and it can only get better in the future. Mr. Toastmaster. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul. We'll be right back with our next speaker.
Thank you very much. And now for our next speaker, Stanley Glitchner.
Speaking in public doesn't have to be a death sentence. At Toastmasters, we can help you overcome your fears.
Our next speaker is Rick Barron. The title of Rick's speech is Life's Better When. Please welcome Rick Barron.
Thank you, Mr. Toastmaster. Please do me a favor and close your eyes. Take a deep breath, hold it for an instant, and now release it slowly. Picture yourself scuba diving under the warm waters of the Caribbean, 40 feet or so below the surface of the water, hovering gently over a healthy reef, inspecting the life that's down there. Now, transition slowly to the green waters of Lake Huron. The water's colder, you're deeper, hovering about 20 feet over the surface of a shipwreck, gazing into the bridge, reflecting on the captain's last moves, trying to keep her afloat before she goes under. Okay, you can open your eyes. Were you by yourself? Or did you have a buddy? I've been certified diver for over 10 years. I've logged over 130 dives. I've been to a maximum depth of 127 feet. I've been face to face with a barracuda whose teeth gave me the inkling that he saw me as a tunnel and wanted to go straight through me. I've been at the bottom of a rock quarry doing a search and rescue drill where I had kicked up the bottom so bad I couldn't even see my hand in front of my face. And in every single one of those dives, I did it with a buddy. Life's better when it's shared. Life's better when it's shared. A number of years ago, I transitioned from warm water Caribbean diving to cold water lake diving to experience shipwrecks. And to do that, I end up wearing a dry suit, which is like a big bag with latex seals around my wrists and around my neck. In getting dressed to get into the water, I started wearing technical dive gear, which means I have double tanks, triple breathing devices, 3 lights, 3 reels, 2 cutting devices, a host of equipment that weighs well over 100 pounds. In getting dressed to get into the water, I request help from my buddy no less than 6 times to just get dressed to get into the water. No less than 6 times. Once we get into the water, we do one more check where we check each other over for bubbles to make sure that there are no leaks. So we have a plan and an objective for our dive. We know exactly why we're there and what we're doing. We've spent time talking about when we turn the dive. In other words, when we head back. We've spent another time talking about what would happen in case we got separated. In addition, we also have spent time rehearsing and drilling the process of sharing air in case one of us were to run out of breathing gas. Who's your life buddy? Who are you sharing your life with? Who in your life have you shared your plan with? Who in your life has provided you constructive feedback and input? Who's there for you when you lose your way? Who's there for you should you get lost? Who's there for you if you should run out of breathing gas and need someone to rescue you? Life is better when it's shared. Thank you, Mr. Toastmaster.
Thank you, Rick. We'll be right back.
I'd like to begin tonight with a little joke. This guy, he's a farmer, and he says, "Hey, hello, sorry." But seriously, folks.
Speaking in public is no joke.
Doctor says, chicken says...
For help, call Toastmasters, the public speaking support group.
The chicken
The next portion of our meeting is the evaluation portion. In this section, the people who participated in the meeting up to this point, the speakers and table topics presenters, will get evaluation from other members of our club. This is a very important part of the Toastmasters experience because it allows you to find out what you did well and also find out areas of what you can improve upon. And helping us to lead this portion of the meeting will be our general evaluator for today. Please welcome Jerome Manigan.
Thank you, Mr. Toastmaster. We are going to hear from evaluators, timers, grammarians, counters, to help us get a better understanding of how well we did with our presentations. We're going to start with the evaluation of Paul Wessels' speech, which was entitled Improvements. His evaluator is Michelle Hennickes. Am I pronouncing that correctly? All right, please come up. Thank you.
So I've had the pleasure of seeing Paul speak 3 times, I think, since I've started here, and each time he's a very dynamic speaker. So I truly enjoy getting up here and listening to you speak. I think you do a great job of getting everybody involved. Today, your project was to get to the point. And basically, Paul had a couple objectives here, and it was to determine a general and a specific purpose of his speech. And the general purpose would be to either inform, entertain, persuade, and what's the other one here? Inspire, or any combination thereof. So I think it was very obvious that Paul was trying to persuade us. I think he was trying to inform us, and I think he was also entertaining us. So I got a little of each one of those. So very clear to me that he defined his general purpose. Then the next step is to define the specific purpose, and that is supposed to be a 1-sentence statement about what he wants the audience to accomplish, or what he hoped to accomplish in his speech, and what he wants the audience to take away from his speech. So again, I think he did a great job on the general purpose. The specific purpose, it took me a few minutes to kind of understand what it was, so that may be one area where you need a slight improvement, maybe make a specific purpose a little bit more noticeable up front. But after you got through this partway through the speech, it was very clear to me. So maybe just make it a little more apparent up front. I also think you did a great job of supporting your purpose once I was able to identify what it was. You had a lot of great examples. So I think one of the things that I've noticed in your style is you like to relate to stories of your family or examples of your childhood, and I think that makes it very personal to all of us. It keeps us entertained, and I like that you ask questions. So you started out with that first question, and you really made us all think about how this speech could relate to us. I also think you did a great job of keeping your nervousness to a minimum. I didn't see any type of nervousness out there. You were very confident in yourself and your topic, and you barely referenced your notes. Actually, I don't even think I saw you look down at them, so I think you did a great job there. And the nervousness, speaking with confidence, and not using your notes was something that was an objective of the speech. So hands down, you did a great job, and I enjoyed it. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Michelle. Our second speaker was Rick Barron with a speech titled Life's Better When. Rick's speech will be evaluated by Gordon Kelly. Gordon is past president of TV Toastmasters.
Mr. Evaluator. Thank you. While this is Rick's overall 6th speech, it is actually Project 5 Your Body Speaks from the Competent Communications Manual. For this project, Rick will be evaluated on stance, body movements, gestures, facial expressions, and eye contact. And to accomplish the evaluation, I will use the manual itself, which gives us an outline. And I'll go through those items and try to evaluate Rick's speech. One was topic selection. I thought it was a very good selection and definitely facilitated body language. His preparation was obviously excellent. His manner was confident and enthusiastic. His posture was poised and balanced. Gestures, one of the things that shows in here is how natural the gestures were. I felt that may have been prohibitive because of holding the mic somewhat. So I put satisfactory on that. Your body movement was satisfactory. Again, I think you might have been limited by the holding of the microphone. Eye contact, very good, very well established. Facial expressions, I thought were very animated and friendly and genuine. Speech purpose, I thought was very clear. And speech organization was very logical and clear again. One of the things that asked in the manual is what could the speaker have done differently to make the speech more effective? My comment is continue to work on making it feel more natural. Not that it didn't appear to be natural, but just to continue making it feel more natural, I think. And what I liked about the speech was I felt the speech itself, what we heard is exactly what we saw. So I think you accomplished what you set out to accomplish. One of the things I wanted to point out, however, on this speech is, you know, I think it can look fairly easy to some people out in the audience to get up here and speak, but and I hope Rick doesn't mind, but here's kind of how Rick prepared, if anybody wants to see. I mean, you can obviously see the preparation that he put into the speech. And it's easy to highlight, but I'm sure he went over this very carefully and in detail, so it took a lot of time. I thought the speech was very appropriate, and I'd like to thank you, Rick.
Thank you, Gordon. The word meister for today was Brenda Murphy. She gave us the word inkling, and we heard that word in presentation subsequent to today's program. Carol Kormelink served as Tabletopics. Is it mistress or master in these settings? Are you a mistress or are you a master?
I'm a master of the table.
All right, she was Tabletopic Masters, and we heard people talk about popcorn. I've had hot buttered popcorn, but I don't think I've ever had cheese. Yes, I have. I take that back. I have had cheese popcorn. Yes, I have. But never popcorn with ribs. We heard about cobwebs. And in hearing about cobwebs, we learned about two types of spiders. One spider eats up other spiders and insects, and one spider busies him or herself with building cobwebs. Now, is it the male spider or the female spider that weaves the cobwebs?
If I had to guess, I would say men because they usually make the mess, but
Okay.
I really don't know.
All right. We heard about birthdays. Steve, growing older is inevitable. Eat off of the senior menu. It won't kill you. And we heard about dozens. I loved it when Gordon said that he had no inkling of what he was doing standing up here, but he knew that a dozen months had passed since last July. But really, it hasn't been a dozen months, Gordon. It's almost a dozen months. All right. Very good. I think we had a real good program this morning. Heard a lot of things, saw a lot of things, learned some new things. Now we're going to hear from our timer, Christine Sullivan.
For Tabletopics, we had 4 speakers. And the first one up was Phil. And he gave 1 minute and 57 minutes for his speech. Michelle was next, and she gave 1 minute and 38 seconds. Steve was third, and he gave 2 minutes and 6 seconds. And Gordon had 2 minutes and 26 seconds. For the speeches, Paul, his speech was 6 minutes and 30 seconds. And Rick's speech was 4 minutes and 57 seconds. That's when I thought my duties were over, and Carol informed me that I needed to do, I needed to test the evaluators, which I'm sorry, Michelle. She told me towards the middle of that, you didn't time them. So, my apologies. Gordon, yours was 2 minutes and 25 seconds for the evaluation. Thank you.
Thank you, Christine. You had no inkling that you were to time others after the speakers and the evaluators. Is that it?
Apparently, I had some short-term memory loss, but yes.
All right. That's quite all right. It's quite all right. We're going to hear from Brenda Murphy. Brenda served as our word meister. She gave us inkling. Now she is going to serve as grammarian, and she's going to also give us some idea of the number of ahs and ums and pregnant silences that we sometimes resort to when we are trying to make our way through a speech. Brenda?
Thank you, Toastmaster Jerome. My goal is to provide feedback on the word use of the day and the counting of ahs during our speaking opportunities, and also make remarks on any possible opportunity areas for grammatical improvement. So I'll start with the word of the day, and I'm very happy to report that we had 16 uses of the word of the day in the meeting, and it was very smooth. I was very impressed with how smooth everyone incorporated that word in their speaking opportunities. And for reporting on the ahs, Jerome, I just would like to point out, I think you are a master at avoiding using ahs. And just my observation, your technique is you're very deliberate in your speaking, and I think that is something we need to aspire to and emulate. I'm speaking of myself because I'm the biggest violator of ahs. So thank you. Very appreciate your role there. We had let me first just say, besides Jerome, no ahs at all today. Our Toastmaster Darren, no ahs. I think to me, because I'm the biggest ah violator, that is tremendous. Thank you. Great things for us to aspire to. Carol, no ahs today. Excellent work. So besides myself, I counted at least 3 ahs that I might have said. Phil, 1. And Michelle, 4. I'm with you, lady. I'm right there. And Gordon, 1. And Paul, 2. And yours were so slight. And this kind of bridges over to my comments with regard to the grammatical part of the reporting. Is sometimes you may catch yourself as almost saying an ah, and you're like, and there's just like this pa, and there's a noise that does come out. So it could be bend the rules a little bit, could be an ah, but there were 2 there. And I believe that concludes the reporting of that. And just one more remark about possible, there was my awe. I'm with you, Michelle. Possible reporting of opportunities for improving grammatical displays within our communication. That would be to maybe keep your sentences more complete and not stop in the middle of a sentence and then change directions. So the opportunity maybe to not use incomplete sentences so much, just continue down your speaking when you start a sentence.
Thank you very much. Some final general comments. I think we started pretty much on time for us. The room was set up, our banner is up. Nikki, who is our director, making it possible for those of you at home to see us, was moving about, getting cameras set up, framing, doing all of the things that were necessary to get us to the air. The room was set up. We were ready to start when we started, I think. Darren served as a very competent Toastmaster, and it is to his hands that I now return this microphone, this lectern, this meeting. Darren, thank you.
Thank you, Jerome. I agree with Jerome. I thought this was a fantastic meeting. Sometimes, less is more. What I mean by that is we had 2 speakers. Oftentimes we'll have 3 or 4 speakers, but I thought our 2 speakers were excellent. They both gave us some things to really think about. I was very attentive to both speeches. Fantastic table topics and great feedback from our general evaluator and our evaluator. So I think it was a fantastic meeting. With that, I'd like to wrap up the meeting and adjourn TV Toastmasters Club 9523.
We're not finished because
Yes.
All the education in the world won't help you get ahead in life if you can't express your ideas effectively. Every day, competition for advancement gets tougher and tougher. You need an edge. A Toastmasters Club can give you that edge. A low-cost learning experience for men and women. Toastmasters gives you the confidence to express your ideas to anyone. Get the Toastmasters edge.